Okay, call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rick, I should mention that Leonard was unable to make it. He had a death in his family, and he's in Pennsylvania.
Okay, consent agenda. Recommended action, approve the items below which are included in the consent agenda. 5A, the August 21st meeting minutes. 6B, mentors. 7A, donation acceptance. 7B, certification of lead evaluators. And it says 7F, but it's actually 7B.
I changed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
For special education. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Yes.
Just a technicality that Dan just pointed out. Should we?
What did he say?
That's a
Did he say
secret.
the end of the meeting again?
No. There's actually we're assigning the mentors prior to the acceptance of the individual.
Oh,
So,
That's right. Time.
Should we remove it?
yes.
Yes. How do I change
So
that?
I'll just remove it, and then I'll just, so,
sorry, I should have brought that up.
that's okay. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Thanks, Dan.
And then we will, and then I'll just go change it, so you have to remember to read it later.
Correct.
That was 6B that we're gonna redo, right?
It's probably a good moment, Rick, just to remind everybody that the consent agenda is, it's there, but open to change. So if there's even a small reason that you would like to have any one of the items taken off the consent agenda, you're always welcome to do it.
You can do it via email before the meeting, or you can do it
Just let us know.
at the time.
Joan, can you not vote?
I can.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you gonna vote?
I did.
Oh, you did, okay. Sorry, sorry.
Vote 6-0. Good of the cause. Mr. Wood, would you like to say anything?
I am good. Thank you, though. Thanks for asking.
Are you the famous Dana Wood?
I'm Dana Wood.
I'm Martha Spear. Pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Martha.
I'm meeting all sorts of people. It's an exciting night for you. Superintendent's report, Roger.
Sure. Well, today was a big day, so I thought I would just mention a few things about today. But before I do, I wanted to mention, you brought up the board goals, and in the spirit of strategic goal number 3, community outreach and involvement, I wanted to mention that we do have some renewed interest in public information flow, and the board can be included in any of this that you would like to be as well. And that means, and this is through some ongoing conversations with Lake Placid News, and we certainly can always extend that. But Lake Placid News has been a terrific venue for us, and they're always welcoming articles and columns and other news. So they've asked us if we would be open to renewing our Blue Bomber Voices column. That means that every other week we would submit, we being anyone in the district, submit a column, and the news would publish that. We've got our first one in for this Friday, and then every other week. So I did share that, Rick, with you on a schedule for that, so that if the board would like to volunteer column at any point along the school year, you're welcome to it. All we have to do is put you in the spreadsheet, and it has to be submitted by the Monday afternoon with publication on was it Thursday afternoon or Friday, Thursday afternoon online and Friday on paper. So the Blue Bomber Voices is back. They're also encouraging us to address our press release approach, and they really want to see us enhance our use of press releases so that we can get the word out when needed. In addition, they've got some ideas for opportunities for kids, including something called Students as Writers, so allowing our students to contribute to the newspaper, and also potentially ideas like writing contests. They have a biography writing contest there. That's germinating at the Lake Placid News. We'll see how they do with that. Lake Placid News has been a great partner of ours, and when I go back maybe 20 years, they were particularly good at working with our kids back then. We had some of our students who were contributors, and matter of fact, when Andy Flynn was Andy's second or third time as the editor, he was also he was doing a dual job. He was the editor of the school newspaper, and he was also working at the local paper. And so we had a lot of good crossover. So we're trying to rebuild some of those connections, and I think to everybody's benefit. So board goal number 3, we're working on already, and boards are welcome to contribute at any point along the way. But I was starting with today, and today was a busy day in the district. We began the day with welcoming back the faculty and staff with a breakfast at 7:30. And we had, and Jeff was able to attend. We're really glad you were able to attend. And Rick was able to attend, and Rick was also able to extend a welcome on behalf of the board. So Rick, thanks very much for doing that. We also had Brendan Gotham, Kathy Briggs, and Cora Clark speaking on behalf of their unions as well. So then we launched into a guest presentation by a gentleman named Tom Bull, and you've probably heard me mention him before. We have an ongoing relationship with Mr. Bull. He's worked as a consultant with our athletic programs and with our middle school, and so this year we asked him to give the keynote address for opening day, and I'll just characterize it. It was terrific. It was absolutely terrific. It was funny, he was engaging, and he was powerful. The message he sent was powerful. I think everybody left feeling empowered to start the year right. And I pulled out one quote, pulling the greatness out of each other. In other words, that it's really in the connections between the two of us that, or all of us really, that we're able to, to grow and build along the way. So whether we're talking students or whether we're talking teachers or staff, it was really a powerful message. So many thanks to Tom Bull for his presentation today. We did also dedicated the rest of the day to meetings and preparation, classrooms, lessons, other opportunities as well. Then over at the elementary school, at noon today, there was a kindergarten orientation. So we saw most of our kindergartners today and their parents. And at the point the kids were separated from the parents, and the parents got to hear from the leaders at the school, Deanna Brown, the counselor, and Sonia Franklin, the principal, about kindergarten, and the kids got to be with teachers and each other and teaching assistants. So it was a nice day. I think we do kindergarten orientation well. So thanks to the principal, Sonia Franklin, and Deanna Brown, and the teachers. We have a great team. Pat Uliva, who's the veteran of the 3, Brianna Weil, and who was new last year, so she was in her 2nd year, and Megan Monahan, who's new to the district as a kindergarten teacher. So that's our new kindergarten team. The elementary school continued its day today, welcoming people. 4:30, they welcomed new students, and that could be kindergartners, but it was also new transfers, and we had 5th graders provide tours, served as tour guides for new students. So that was a nice piece. And then at 5 p.m. there was an open house followed by the picnic, which we are all missing right now. So if you're hungry, we would have to reschedule this meeting if you want to enjoy that next year. Anyway, a really nice opening day. Looking ahead, tomorrow's another superintendent's conference day, and that's dedicated again to planning. And then on Thursday, we welcome back students, and that's the big day. Other things that we're looking forward to, Monday, the middle and high school welcomes families for their open house, and that starts at 5 p.m. Thursday, the middle school will host a meeting for parents of 8th graders to discuss the plans for the annual 8th grade field trip to Washington, D.C. So that planning meeting starting right now. The trip itself is scheduled for October 14th through 17th. Different time frame than last year. They're working on the perfect time to put it in the calendar. Between now and the next board meeting, we also have numerous athletic contests. We have an early field trip for the AP environmental class, and we have planning for the 6th grade Pocono-McCready trip, and that is the annual overnight that the 6th grade does. They'll be planning for that in the upcoming week, and then that trip is scheduled for September 19th through 20th. So we are picking up speed and moving quickly, and it's very exciting. And that's everything I have.
Any questions? Thank you. Information for the board. Newly added, I'm not sure when these were added, but there's 2 articles, New York Times article and one that ran in the Press Republican and also in the Adirondack Daily Enterprise, addressing resource officers. Plattsburgh has just hired some. Beekman Town, Plattsburgh has 2, Beekman Town has 1, I believe. We brought this up at the last BOCES board meeting, and it turned into quite a spirited debate. I know Chateauguay has 2. They cover not only the school day, but they cover into extracurricular activities as well. So it seems to be a growing trend, and there's pretty good debates out there among school boards and amongst community members. So, so Roger put these on here for review, and I'd like to just throw it out there if we'd like to discuss it at one of the next meetings, just to get our point. I'd rather be proactive than to sit here and have a couple of parents come in and start asking our opinion and choosing that time to formulate a board directive.
It makes sense to have a unified voice, and we should have a discussion about it.
Sure.
We should have a clear, direction from the board, because it will come up at some point, for sure. So yeah, I'd be all for it. Even the next meeting, when
Okay.
let's have some time.
Okay, any other comments on it?
Sounds good. I agree.
The next section is new to some people, so let me just briefly explain, and anyone else we approved last meeting are now active. And as we go through the meeting, it's important that we realize that we're covering some of the strategic plan, our objectives, during the meeting. And so this time in the meeting, it's time to basically bring those up, such as, I'll bring up that later on in the agenda is donations. It's a consent agenda item, but it aligns itself with the last bullet of Goal 6. And then Roger's, the superintendent's report, that would align itself with the community outreach strategic goals. So, takes a little forward thinking, looking at the agenda, looking at the strategic objectives until they become second nature, which they will after you stare at them.
Well, I think one of the things that Roger pointed this out at the end of the last year was that by doing that, we have almost a report card on the board, how we are doing in achieving the goals we set for ourselves by doing this and keeping track of it. So it is a really good thing to do.
And during the agenda setting meetings, if we're missing out on something, we can always address it as well. So, anybody else have any comments or inclusion information? Okay, let's enter into the discussion phase, the fund balance allocation. Dana, you in?
No?
Yeah.
I've looked at it, but.
So I'll share with you everything I can. I put some notes in your backup information. If you've been tuning into the discussions along the way, you've seen the numbers change. And again, that's because it's over the summer that all the final accounting is done, that the final outlays are determined, and it's especially true with some of these large budget items, like in this case, of retirement costs. So we get your bill for our retirement costs every year, and while we budget for it at the beginning of the year, we're not really billed until it's been about this time. So Leonard was able to make some final determinations based on that mostly, and then there were some other reimbursement issues that came in unexpected. And so that means that the predictions have been a low of around $60,000, and now it's really at the high point for this year, which is $260,086.89, and so Leonard was finalizing this, and then you can see at the top of the document it's audited, right? So, and that means that he's consulted with our outside auditors and made all the final decisions, and now considers this the final number, right? So the decision for the board, therefore, is to decide what to do with the $260,000+ that was excess, unexpected. So the following documents, and I think I will not go through all the documents unless you want to ask, and then maybe Dana can chime in as well. But the documents sort of lay out where the reserves are. They're not terribly different, except some of the numbers have now changed. They've been revised. You can see the ending fund equity, $4.5 million. The final number is not going to be any different. It's just where that's allocated. So if you go to, this is the third, no, let's see, you go to so this would offer some explanation. And if you go to the last page, you'll see that Leonard has laid out for us 4 options. And I would caution you to think that these are the only possible options, but we figured giving you more than 4, it could be overkill. So so we provided you with 4 options. And what that means is, where would we recommend that the excess funds go? So option 1 would maintain it all in the unassigned fund balance, right? So there's pros and cons to that, right? The unassigned fund balance is the least restrictive, the most flexible. We can use that money when we need it. We know we're going to need it for the upcoming BOCES capital project. None of that's new news for you. So that's what option 1 is, leaving it all there. The problem, of course, with that is that we continue to exceed the cap, the 4% cap that's determined by state regulations, and we exceeded by a larger amount than the other options. All right. Option number 2 would keep all but $117,000 in the unassigned fund balance, and then move $100,000 into the EPILAR and $17,000 into the liability claim reserve. So just as a refresher, first the liability claim reserve. That is that special reserve that we created. It's at the maximum, although now there's room for $17,000 more. It was at the maximum last year. Room for $17,000 more. It's a special reserve that we are going to use to pay off part of the capital fund. I'm sorry, the BOCES capital project, right? So it's about $500,000. You could scroll back up and see what that is for that liability claim reserve. That would just max it out, and then the other $100,000 would go into the EPILAR. That is the reserve that pays for retiree benefits for unused sick days. And we have calculated a liability there. It's an accounting calculation of about $1.8 million that we're liable for. We are presently at, scroll back up, 1.1 was it 1.2?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1.127, I believe. In that reserve, but we know we're using, we had 6, 7, 8 retirees between June 30th and through this current year, where we have Leonard, Dee Dee, and George, and Clarence, and all people we can talk about all along. So we know we're using the MLR, so the $100,000 would replenish some of that, but actually wouldn't replenish all that we're going to use. So that's why the word recommended is above option number 3, and that's where, because we're expecting about $200,000 to come out of the FLR reserve this year with all the retirements. And so $200,000 would go back into the FLR, and then the 60,000 plus would stay in the unassigned fund balance. So the unassigned fund balance would still increase, but only by $60,000. And then you can see option 4, very similar, only instead of $60,000 going into the unassigned fund balance, it's a little less because we're maxing out that liability claim reserve with $17,000 in there. So,
Roger, is there an average, so to say, of when you have someone retiring of what they're leaving on the table for their sick time when they leave?
well, it does depend on the classification, right? So a teacher, the maximum would be, and I have to go into the contract, it's about $27,000. Right? A teaching assistant, it's a little less. And then there are possibilities with other employees depending on their contract. So management confidential administrative contracts are all individualized. So there is a possibility for it being more.
There is a ceiling, though, that they can't exceed, is that correct?
There is a ceiling. It's very clear with the faculty because it's written into the negotiated contract. So we can see it right there. You'd have to go into every individual's contract with the others.
Thank you.
So questions about the fund balances?
Just one, I know we've been kind of over on the unassigned reserve for a while, and we know why. But how often does the state actually review that and audit?
So it's been about 2 years,
Yeah.
2 or 3, when we were audited by the state. So we were audited by the state. We had state auditors here for 6 to 8 weeks,
I remember that.
going through our books. At the time, we were right about 4%, and so that it wasn't an issue for them. My guess is that if they came back tomorrow, if they're watching us today,
They're watching.
then that would probably be written up for exceeding the max.
Even though we have a reason for doing it, so they would just make us move it to the post, put it into a different account for the posted capital.
Well, your point about the reason for doing it, I think, is a good one, because I think the board's been really responsible about all along articulating that we understand that we've exceeded the cap. However, this money is coming for, the unanticipated expense, $1.5 million, right? That's not a small number. So I think the board's been really clear about that. That would probably help. I don't really know what they would say in the end, but certainly that's where it would come in, state audit.
It's also written up in our audit as well, that we'll be receiving October.
That's right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what's it seems like a lot of money on its face, so I don't know, is that like just because it's 27,000 times how many ever staff we have?
Yeah, the liability.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a calculation. That's about right. It actually, it'll be a little different for, at different employees, those long spreadsheets. Because,
Sure.
Not only are different classifications, but some people have, don't have the same number of sick days remaining as others. And so the potential for them might be lower than for others. So it's quite a calculation. That being said, every time, so those kinds of calculations, I think I used the word accounting. That's probably better. There's probably a better word to use, right? It's a practice that's used, but it doesn't take into account just the unpredictable nature of what we do here
Sure.
all the time. When somebody with 20 years of experience here resigns to take a different position, that was not predicted on the spreadsheet. right? So that changes it, that would lower it, right? When somebody new is hired, maybe when the board agrees to add a position, the number goes up, right? So, there's lots of different ways that can change. And then the other thing that happens is the rules change. And it hasn't changed for this, I don't believe, lately, but there have been some recent changes, maybe you and Leonard have talked about this, Dana, in some of the general rules, which makes dramatic changes in our liabilities, and so talk about the numbers, the numbers go, I don't even want to say the numbers, but it's in the multiple millions, that all of a sudden it changes, and it's only because the rule changed, right? Nothing else changed. Right? So, yeah, it is a pretty large number. And we're actually pretty close to it with 1.1, 1.2 million of that number. That's one of those reserves that it's far more restricted than some of the others. So the unassigned is at least restricted, but there's also the unemployment reserve, and that's not as restricted. So the board could vote tomorrow to release those funds, whereas it could not do that for the FLR. There's different rules attached to each one of these first.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Why is option 3 recommended?
So option 3 is purely recommended because that number 200,000 adheres closely to what we're taking out of it this year. So that would be kind of the even exchange. Right?
Anyone else? Jeff?
My only question, but it's just clarification. So when we do move it to the FLR, that's it. We can't change our minds.
Right.
It's a done deal. Okay.
So this is an action item later on. And so the board could choose to decide tonight or not, and put it off until the next meeting. It's up to you.
Any other clarification needed or questions? Okay, great, thank you. Minutes, we're on the consent agenda. Personnel matters. Long-term teaching staff appointment. Recommended action upon recommendation of the superintendent, Jamie Mercier, is that it? Mercier? Is hereby appointed to the long-term position of 6th grade math teacher in middle high school, commencing on September 1st, 2018 until June 30th, 2019. Salary is $43,176, step 1, bachelor's. The teacher's salary schedule for the 2018-2019 school year. Do I have a motion to accept this?
Yes.
Thank you, Colleen. Second? Yes. Joe? Discussion. Okay, there's no discussion. Let's vote. And passes 7-0. Thank you. Yes, the appointment of the mentors. We voted on this already. Do we need to vote on this again, Karen?
You only voted to take it out. You have
Oh,
to-
we
you have
took
to-
it out, okay.
Right, so you have to
So
vote on
we
that.
put it back in, thank you.
Yeah.
Appointment of additional mentors and sponsors. This is for Jamie and John Burdick as a mentor. Recommended action, superintendent appoint additional mentor sponsors noted below for the 2018-2019 school year. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Jeff. A second?
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Discussion.
What exactly does a mentor do?
That's a good question. Do you want to jump in?
Sure.
Yeah, because you actually oversee this.
Well, one, I mean, when you look at it, the state has mandated it, but I think most schools probably had something in place before the state mandated. And really the goal is to partner a new staff member with a veteran person to kind of help them through and guide them through the first year in terms of, the logistical navigation of a school, in terms, grades, things like that, but also the curriculum stuff. And that's where you can see with John Burdick being the mentor, he was the 6th grade teacher that she's replacing. He can sit down with her on a weekly basis and just kind of talk to her about how things are going. If she's got questions about the process, it's someone there to that can answer these questions. It's not part of their evaluation. It is truly a relationship between the veteran teacher and the new teacher. That's all it really comes down to guidance. Guiding them through the first year. That's always the kind of the running thing with the new teacher, with the first year teacher, is you're barely staying above water, because as much as you learn in college, as you all know, with any job, the real learning goes on once you're in the job itself. So having someone guide you through and navigate you through that process, it just makes it a little less stressful.
Plus New York State Act, don't they require it?
Yes.
They do require it,
Yeah.
But it's also in our contract.
Yep.
It's in our teacher's contract, and it's and the contract itself refers to a much longer document outlining the details of being a mentor or being a sponsor. Sponsors are just a little bit different. That was part of negotiations about the mentors, and what we did agree to is that we could revisit the actual longer document to maybe revisit our quality of our mentoring program and some of the details of it. We haven't done that yet, but we opened the door to that with approval of last year's contract last summer.
There is a stipend with this?
There is.
I think it's a tremendous plus to the new faculty member to have that person to go to. I think it's amazing.
I mean, even last year we hired a person that had 20+ years of teaching that came. And even though they're not really new to the profession, they're new to Lake Placid, that individual end up having a mentor or a sponsor. Again, just to guide them through the process, because every school is slightly different in terms of the procedures, and just guiding them through budget process and grades and just the day-to-day stuff that's not part of necessarily the teaching. Yeah.
Some of the mentoring, some of the decisions about who should be the mentor are for a variety of reasons. So this one is you can see, as Dana mentioned, very closely connected with the curriculum. Jamie is replacing John, and that's kind of a natural fit for that. But often we'll make a recommendation based on some other quality. Sometimes what we're trying to do is to inspire more collaboration across subjects. So we'll have a mentor who's not in the same department or grade level. Sometimes there'll be a specials teacher, an art teacher, say, with somebody who's in a general education teacher, or vice versa. Sometimes we're trying to make sure with our mentoring program that our teachers don't become isolated in one area, either subject area or even some physical location. Sometimes they get the classroom in the back corner and they don't get out much. We might connect them with somebody somewhere else. So we have a variety of reasons for making the decisions about who's going to be mentored.
In the last couple of years, we've actually had, in some cases, double for that very reason.
Yeah.
Someone within the subject area or the grade level, but also someone that we felt they could benefit by connecting. And one of the things talking about the community outreach, but also the community outreach within the building itself. And when you have that that position where it's a department of two, you're naturally going to have work with that one person, but building that relationship beyond that department of two so that they can have a greater connection to the school community. And we've done that in the last couple of years.
Thanks. Sure.
Thank you. Everyone voted. 7-4-0 against. Moving to the additional items, donation is under consent. Certification of lead evaluators is consent. Brings us right back to the fund balance allocation. The action reads, recommended action, whereas Lake Placid Central School has an unspent balance from the 2017-2018 general fund expenses, has been presented with 4 options for adjustments of the unassigned fund balance. see options 1, 2, 3, and 4. Be it resolved, Board of Education approves the unspent balance from 2017-2018 general fund expenses to the accounts listed on option 3 as per the attached. Be it further resolved that the Board of Education further directs the business manager to make said transactions to the account listed on option 3 as per the attached. May I have a motion to accept?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Is there discussion, additional discussion?
No, just seems like that's my largest liability. This is probably what I would do with my own household income, you know?
It makes the most sense, and I think probably Leonard is giving us a pretty, strong directive of where to put it.
This is one of those, we'll call it a problem, that's a good problem to have, right? Leonard and I have talked about this a lot. The recommendation for option 3 is purely a sort of a rational one, but it's nothing we're personally attached to. So if you think that there's good reason to do it a different way, that's fine with us. But we went with that option just, as I said, because if we're going to spend 200 out of it, we may as well put 200 back.
If you look at it, it's an easy, 200 out, 200 in type of deal. You're balancing, like you said, the greatest liability. You're spending, so you replenish, because we're going to have retirees in the next couple of years that are going to hit that fund anyway.
I noticed that the language that we're casting our vote for doesn't specify options.
So I would just took out all the other ones and put in option 3.
And I think in board docs, you have to go out and come back in again to see that.
Right. Yeah, so I put in there the option 3.
Their other ones aren't showing up.
And one other thing there. You can't vote?
It's not coming up now.
Oh, okay. It's all right.
So the action passes 7-0. Calendar reapproval for the 2018-2019 school year. Recommended action, be it resolved, the Board of Education readopts the school calendar for school year 2018-19 to include graduation date of June 28, 2019. Said calendar is subject to change due to unforeseen circumstances, as attached here too and incorporated by the reference.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll second.
Whatever. Any discussion on this? Discussed this last week.
One of the later dates, I think, graduation, isn't it?
It's the later bit.
We're going to wait to vote.
Oh, that's not good.
Okay. All right, 7-4-0. Okay, this motion passes. Special education is the next item, which was on the consent agenda. Entering the adjournment phase. Next meeting is September 18th at 6:30 right here, and then following is October 2nd in Wilmington, one of our 2 meetings in Wilmington. Old agenda items? Do they have anything? Solve anything? New agenda items, I'll put on there the SRO, the school resource officer.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the merger. If you look cross? That hasn't happened yet, correct?
No, it did. It was approved last meeting.
Oh, okay, it was. I was just curious about whether there was a budget for that. I didn't see how much it actually was gonna cost.
Right, we did not present specific numbers. We gave you kind of an estimate.
Anything else?
Essentially, I think I said,
It's been really hot. I have like no recollection of that.
coach, transportation, and referees.
Okay.
And we did, so we had a long discussion about it, and it is an additional cost for us.
There were 4 people here last meeting that were supporting.
Parents and.
Parents.
Yeah.
But you might get a chance later on because they're still interested in the modified team. Great interest in the modified.
I think that's why they were here, was it not? To make sure that we were not going to just stop the farce. Okay. Adjournment phase. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Colleen, do I have a second?
Yep.
Rhoda? All in favor?
Aye.
7-4-0 against. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Nice job.
Don't get used to these short meetings.
It just says, it just says.
Hey, Roger, do you know if Leonard will be back for Wednesday?
It said.